Well, today's meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy will have major implications for the war in Ukraine and politics overall. For more on this, Leslie Sanchez and Michael LaRosa are in our Washington bureau. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and a Republican strategist, and Michael is a former spokesperson and advisor to then First Lady Jill Biden, and he's currently a partner with the government relations firm Ballard Partners. Thank you both for joining us. Leslie, let's start with you. President Trump was set on wanting a ceasefire before the summit with Putin. Now the president wants a full peace agreement. Between that and his calls for Ukraine to give up land and not join NATO, isn't President Trump just going along with everything that Putin wants?
I think it's the exact opposite of that. If anything, I think the president has done an incredible job of kind of laying the foundation, moving from a ceasefire conversation to now a peace negotiation. But it didn't just start there. It was a series of steps the president's made since the beginning of the administration to where we are now, and fundamentally looking at keeping that pressure on Russia while also encouraging the influence and having that influence over Europe. Adding these U.S. security assurances to the conversation, adding this urgent meeting that's happening this week, all of those are a series of steps that are more formed toward action than a lot of the outspoken kind of bravado statements that people wanted to see, as opposed to actually getting something done.
Well, Michael, let me ask you, if a peace deal is reached, will this end up being a big win for President Trump that he can hang his hat on?
I don't know. It depends what's in the details. I mean, I don't think he wants to be the third president under his watch to allow Russia to expand. And as George W. Bush did when they invaded Georgia, as Barack Obama did, frankly, when they invaded Crimea. And President Biden, when I was at the White House, took great pride in the fact that we strengthened NATO and rallied our allies around the world to really stop Putin. And now President Trump really seems to want to give Putin what he hasn't been able to achieve on the battlefield, which is more land. And at some point, we have to figure out how we're going to really leverage this against Putin so that he's not further incentivized to keep going after more land. And right now, I don't see what that is.
Now, we've also got to talk about the redistricting fight. Leslie, I want to ask about this. This started in Texas with support from President Trump to give Republicans 5 more seats in the House after the midterms. But now California is looking to redraw their maps. So is this plan starting to backfire for Republicans?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can explain anything that Governor Newsom's going to do over there other than start another political kind of proxy war that's going to cost several $100 million and kind of go against the will of many other voters. They're two fundamentally different approaches because they have different systems in place when it comes to listening to the voters. Texas is led by a Republican legislator that's enacting the will of voters who were overwhelmingly Republican and aligned with that state, versus the independent commission and going against that, which is what you're seeing in California. And that's led, as you've seen, to these proxy wars and a lot of special interests getting involved that kind of usurps the importance of what the voters had there and puts that democratic democracy role in the hands of a few. So very different in terms of interpreting what the voters want. And I think that's why it gets so highly political on both sides.
And jumping off of that point, Michael, can Governor Newsom even get the support from voters to pass his maps?
We'll see. It depends how angry they are with Donald Trump. They're probably not going to be happy that Texas is violating a lot of norms and traditions from our typical political standards when it comes to redrawing maps. And that is done after the census, not in the middle of the decade. So they might just give Newsom the authority to do that by voting this in and saying, hey, if they're going to play dirty, we're going to play dirty too. They're both violating norms and traditions of how we do this process in a big way.
You know, a lot of folks, real voters, they don't like hearing these terms, gerrymandering and redistricting. This all sounds like a lot of politics to most people. So do both parties stand to lose a couple points with the voters when this is what their main fights are right now, when this is monopolizing a lot of their time, people are fleeing the state to avoid votes? Leslie, let me start with you. How do you think Americans are going to react to all this?
I'm glad you added that, because people are fleeing the state of California to Texas and to other areas that are more friendly and kind of receptive to what these voters want. I think two very different approaches. Texas is responding to the will of the voters, and you have independent commissions in California that the governor is trying to move over and use special interests and kind of get into the court system to draw new lines that are more politicized. So yes, people are going to do the barometer by which they feel conservative or liberal leaning. However, fundamentally, two very different approaches on the same issue.
But Governor Newsom is handing it over to the will of the people, because he is going to put it up for a referendum. And we'll see what the voters of California say in reaction to what Texas is doing. And then it's full-on democracy on display. And let's see what happens, and whoever yields the best results is going to take more seats.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Leslie Sanchez, Michael LaRosa, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.